Now, a lot of people have asked me recently, will President Trump finish the job?
Well, again, what does finish the job mean? Because if finish the job means making sure that Strait of Hormuz is open, that we get the highly enriched uranium, and that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, that is finishing the job.
Okay.
That's finishing the job. And to be clear, that by whether it's the military intervention, the blockade, or the economic fury, this is the first time the Iranians have ever been willing, 47 years, have been willing to discuss not having a nuclear weapon. It was, a verboten subject, and now it's on the table for the first time, thanks to President Trump.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent telling Maria on Sunday that Iran is willing to discuss a deal for the first time that would prevent it from obtaining nuclear weapons. CENTCOM did confirm the U.S. military struck additional Iranian targets this weekend. We actually had new strikes overnight following the downing of an American drone. President Trump reportedly seeking tougher terms in a proposed peace framework. The latest demands include Iran agreeing to never have a nuclear weapon or bomb. Nuclear dust must be unearthed by the U.S. and destroyed. The Strait of Hormuz must immediately be opened. No tolls. Iran must remove and or detonate all sea mines, and the U.S. naval blockade will then be lifted. Let's bring in West Virginia Congressman Riley Moore. Congressman, your reaction, we're watching oil prices tick higher this morning, not just because of this new incursion with Iran, but also because these new Israeli attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Well, thanks, Cheryl. Look, the president has gotten us to a point in which the secretary just outlined that no one has gotten to in the last 47 years. We have the Iranians actually agreeing to not acquiring a nuclear weapon or nuclear material or the ability to be able to put together a nuclear weapon in the future. This is huge. No one has been at this point. So I think, look, I understand everybody's antsy in all of this. We're all nervous. We want things to go quickly and fast. But if we want a quick deal, you can get a quick deal. But we want a great deal. And that's what the president is currently working on. He's putting together a great deal. And this is a two-step process. Step one is opening up the straits. We'll remove the naval blockade if the straits are open. Then you're going to move to step two in this process where, look, if there's no dust, there's no dollars. The dollars can start to flow if the nuclear dust starts to get removed. And the administration, smartly, President Trump, is going to have his hand on that dial to be able to turn that up or turn that down in terms of those dollars based on the amount of nuclear dust that we're able to get back from them. So, of course, this is another masterstroke by the president who's ended multiple conflicts in his term here as president. And I think this is going to be another one that's going to go down in the history books as one of the great peace deals that he's done.
At the same time, though, the concern is the domestic story. And, of course, that is the midterms.
Yeah, I think that this is going to get resolved before the midterms. The president is certainly acutely aware of that. The negotiators are. Everybody's aware of it. But you're not going to sacrifice national security for expediency. That just doesn't make sense. We are at the precipice of having a deal that is going to denuclearize Iran, which no one has gotten this close in the history of the conflict in between our two countries since the Iranian Revolution under the Ayatollah. This is not only going to make the United States safer, it's going to make the entire world safer. So we just need to kind of look. Don't rush on the field yet. The president's about to put another one in the end zone. Just sit tight.
Okay. Let's talk about what's happening with you and your colleagues, because House and Senate GOP leaders are returning to Capitol Hill this week to work on the Republicans' party line immigration enforcement bill after missing President Trump's June 1st deadline. The legislation remains stalled over the president's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, which was just temporarily blocked by a federal judge. Now, Senate Republicans are expecting the administration to propose changes to the program. Another reported option would remove all Justice Department funding from the bill. Congressman, Senate Republicans are prepared to begin this vote-a-rama as early as Wednesday. Where do you stand on these issues?
Yeah, look, we keep doing our job in the House, clearly. We keep passing bills. We send them over to the Senate. We need them to get to work and get this thing done. Whatever those parameters are that they want to come up with on this anti-weaponization fund, which I do think is correct. Why would we not want to give people justice who have been wronged by our own Justice Department, particularly in the last administration? I mean, think about these Catholic churches that were spied on, people that were under surveillance for no particular reason, who were wrongly prosecuted, things like that. This does make sense. Come up with the parameters, send it back to the House. And let's get moving on this, because don't forget, we got the ICE funding tied up in that, HSI, CBP. We need to make sure that we have additional funding for those critical agencies that are so important to our national security.
Well, certainly Senate Democrats are launching now this campaign to eliminate the anti-weaponization fund after that federal judge temporarily blocked the implementation. In a Dear Colleague letter out this morning, actually, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that Democrats are going to use a range of tools, including floor action and oversight, to block it. Here's how former Vice President Mike Pence feels about that fund. Watch this.
I think that the weaponization fund is it's a bad idea from the start, and I would encourage the administration just to drop it. But let's get rid of this fund. I mean, it's deeply offensive to me that you could have a fund that could even possibly compensate people who assaulted police officers or vandalized the Capitol on January 6th. And I think that's broadly held by most Republicans and most Americans.
Congressman, your reaction to those comments from Mike Pence?
Yeah, that's not broadly held by most Republicans. I don't know who he's talking to, perhaps himself. But no, the people clearly understand that there was a wrong that needs to be righted in this in the previous administration in terms of the abuse of the justice system. That's what the president is trying to do, and provide justice to those who were wronged. I mean, this is not complicated. I mean, I understand certainly the former vice president's position as it relates to the current president. But, look, this is something that I think makes a lot of sense to a lot of people on my side of the aisle, particularly in the House. And I'm hopeful that the Senate is going to come to some type of agreement that they can push this thing forward because of everything else that's tied up in this. Don't forget, FISA is going to expire on June 12th, by the way, which is also tied into this. And we need them to send that back over as part of that reconciliation package.
No. Immigration enforcement and FISA extension. Those are the two big points in all of this, Congressman Riley Moore. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's great speaking with you.
You too. Thanks, Cheryl.
All right. Well, we've got a lot more coming up. There's a new report suggesting that Iran used a Chinese-made missile to shoot down a U.S. fighter jet last month, while also giving Tehran long-range early warning radar systems. We've got Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. He's going to weigh in on the U.S.'s next moves. You're watching Mornings with Maria, live on Fox Business.